Everybody, my name is Moritz Pankok and I wish you a warm welcome in Tag der Veranstaltung Kreuzberg. I'm here speaking on behalf of the Tag Theater itself, but also of Stiftung Kommunikationsaufbau. And yeah, we're very happy that you all found your way to us. As you hear, today is an English language evening. And we also will have the possibility to have question and answer afterwards. I'm very pleased because we have kind of restructured a bit our theater. So now we're opening our first season in this year. So this is not only an event which we were actually planning for a long time for Stiftung Kommunikationsaufbau. Actually, it's like kind of our third attempt. We always had logistical questions and then we didn't do this event, Voices from Gaza and Israel with Shay Dashevsky and Hamza Abu Howidy. I'm really happy that you're here today. So we're opening the season. We are celebrating our winners of the last Albert O Hirschman Preis, the VOICE, and that's who you are. So congratulations. I am really glad that I can tell this now in live to you because you couldn't come to the prize itself. Yes, so on the one hand, so we have now the opportunity to get to know Shay and Hamza, and you will quickly see why we thought, or our jury thought, that they would win the prize. This evening also marks that we actually open our call for the next prize, and it's already the third one then. So the Albert O Hirschman Prize VOICE 2026, which will be awarded in autumn, and you will find those little postcards outside. So take them with you and look out for people who are worth winning our prize. You will find information about the prize and everything around it online. Today we are meeting here because we're discussing a very hot issue, which is very much discussed all over the world, but particularly in Berlin. And I think if you talk about Gaza and Israel, many people think they can say something, but it's maybe more important to listen. And this is why we have this format here tonight. And I think that's very important that we have this opportunity. So thank you very much for joining us and for giving us some insight from your perspective about this theme. It will be moderated today by Hanan Liguori. She will also introduce you to Hanan. She's a cultural scientist. She's actually herself from Italian and Palestinian descent, but grown up in Berlin, so far away from the situation down there. But through the collaboration with Hamza and Shay, actually all this came back to her, and she's thankful that she also has this opportunity of this ongoing discourse. Every evening is different from those events. And as I said, afterwards we surely will have time to talk about what we heard, and also after this event outside in the bar. But the event is less about us talking now, but it's about listening. So I want to ask you to stage Hanan, Hamza and Shay.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for the invitation. It's super nice to be together with you two. It has been a while, actually. I think over 8 months or something. It's actually not only about listening. I think listening is a big part of it, but that might be a bit passive or sounds maybe a bit passive. I think it's also a lot about self-reflection, and also about being able to hold space for different perspectives and to actually learn about how to debate stuff, and also to be feeling empathic with each other. Yeah, so these will be also my little rules for interaction, because out of the experience of a lot of evenings like this, self-reflection and respect and patience is written very big. And I will introduce both of them briefly, introduce their work, and then I will ask both of them specific questions, and after that I will ask them to answer questions, both them together. And then you will be invited to talk, which is also a very important part of this evening, I think. Yeah, so, Hamza, you grew up between beautiful beach memories with your father, philosophical conversations, but also between violence of rival groups within Gaza, such as Fatah and Hamas. After your educational path, you decided that you don't want to live under Hamas restrictive politics anymore, and you participated 2019 in the We Want to Live protests. Maybe you know We Want to Live, the protest organization. Not a lot of people know them, which I think that already itself is worth a moment of reflection. You had to endure, sadly, a lot of violence because of your participation, as well as a lot of your friends. And you fled Gaza in 2023, very shortly before October 7th. Since then, you have made your voice heard in uncountable, very important spaces. For me, a child of a person who fled Lebanon as a Palestinian refugee in '84, you broadened my perspective a lot. And now you published your first book about your experience, Muscheln am Strand von Gaza, eine kleine Werbung, in which you speak about memories, loneliness, patience, and the fight for change. And this is Shay. Thank you for being here. Shay, you have been a filmmaker, a photographer, and now you are a cook. You lived in Tel Aviv and in Berlin. You did all of the creative fields, which I think show a deep connection to community and humanity as well. You were part of the left movement in Israel, which meant also you didn't participate in the IDF mandatory military training back then. And when you moved to Berlin, I think you became the cook when you moved to Berlin, and since October 7, your life here changed drastically. You chose to start a project which is called I Am From Israel, Ask Me Anything. Maybe you know this. He went through universities and basically had that poster which said, I'm from Israel, ask me anything. And you visited different university campuses. I will take the first question to you. You take us a bit, I wanted to ask you to take us a bit along your journey from your past 2 years, or over your past 2 years. What changed for you since you began your political work, and what changed from you doing the project I Am From Israel, Ask Me Anything, to your lectures that you're giving now, or your presentations about focusing on the history of anti-Zionism movements? Yeah, and that's my first question for you.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot of actually questions, because yeah. Where should I start? I would say I was not so active before 7 of October. I was active in Israel like 20 years ago when I was young in a very left-wing organization. And I actually was kind of burned out, like many Israelis, and wanted to leave the troubles and move to Germany to have a comfortable life without all the mess from the Middle East. Which was for about 7 years until 7 of October happened. And yeah, as you said, everything pretty much changed. Starting from my close friends who were celebrating 7th of October while I was watching videos of, people getting slaughtered and having conversation with people that I noticed there's a lot of propaganda, a lot of hate, automatic hate, and misinformation, and it started to be more and more surrounding everywhere I go, and I thought to, not me alone, but we had a group called the Civil Watch Against Anti-Semitism, where we together worked and noticed a lot of things we haven't noticed before. For example, we never noticed open Hamas support, stuff like this, which was very scary for us as a group, and we tried to show, explain how dangerous it is. Until now, we work constantly with many other groups. There's always something going on, and it's connected to anti-Semitism. It's also connected to German politics, but we had a chance to be in university 2 days in a row, and it was very interesting experience, and we decided to make a project out of this, and we went to almost any university in Berlin and Potsdam except Ali Solomon, and I would say it was very enlightening experience, because we saw a lot of we had the first experience of what people say, what people think, how this indoctrination sadly works.
Can I ask something in between that I just thought of? And what was the point where you thought it would be a good idea to sit down with Hamza and do this project together?
That was my next point. Yeah. So, but you had another question before.
It led to your momentarily occupation with your project of history of anti-Zionism, but you can come to that.
Yeah, so that's all kind of like extension of this work of trying to sit with people and just have talks and back and forward. And at some point I got to know Hamza, and I think we both had the same idea of like de-radicalization of everything that's going around, and we both had the same goal about that, and luckily we could work together and make events together. And I thought it's just extension of what I do anyhow, like just sit and talk and have debates or talks. It's not always a debate, and it could be more have more impact. So it was just extension. Luckily, I managed to meet Hamza, and we had, I think, the group had more than 20 events. I think we had something like 15, so it's quite a lot for 1 year in Berlin. And since then I also have my own, like we also do each one his own things, but separately I also have kind of like presentation about the history of anti-Zionism, because I see a lot of people just get, as I said, sadly, their information from outside, and they see it as a moral thing. A lot of people want to be anti-Zionist today because they think it's a very moral thing, but I think I know from what's going on that is leading to a lot of hate, and I think it is part of anti-Semitism that we kind of miss, even in the Jewish community. So that's why I'm quite focused on it.
Can you just briefly explain what you mean from outside? Like getting information from outside? Do you mean like social media? Like what do you mean with outside?
Yeah, I would say like what people know about Zionism is not from Zionism itself. Nobody reads Pinsker, Ein Abend, all the people who came up with the idea of Zionism, which is more than 100 years old idea. But they get it from social media mainly, and it's usually from the side that criticize it. And a lot of it is the same narrative of the anti-Semitic narrative, of conspiracy theory, and demonizing whole population through Zionism. So today it's like a very bad word, and even non-Jews are called Zionists if they just say the wrong word. And that's I feel the danger in this political discourse. Like when you talk about democracy and then you say the wrong thing and you called a name that you don't even know what it means, but it's kind of became a schimpfwort, like a bad word. It just cuts the debate, and it's very dangerous, I think.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Hamza, your past 2 years have been quite turbulent. You also visited a lot of stages, but secretly you've been writing a book, and openly you've been taking part in organizations such as Realign for Palestine, which tries to bring Palestinian voices from everywhere internationally, but also from Gaza, to speak up for possible perspectives for what can happen with this very small but very pretty piece of land, where your heart also lays. And I wanted to ask you, because in your book you write that you sometimes feel like the loneliest Palestinian, and I can kind of relate to that, but I wanted to ask you why you feel like that, or if you can explain this a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there is many reasons if I can think why I said this exact sentence, but it has much to do with when did I have to write this book, and I started working on it on the second year actually of the war, and it was very intense. It was very intense in the land itself, like Palestine, Israel, or even here in the discourse in Europe. And in a way or another, yes, I like to think of myself as a pro-Palestinian. I think I'm a one. But on the other hand, I couldn't see myself aligning with everything the pro-Palestinians were doing. I'm not trying to say they were doing lots of bad things, but I wouldn't say that these are the things that I will wanted to advocate for, especially with the time that was happening, because it's also a matter of if we want to be a success movement, we have to prioritize what we are calling for. Everything is important, but for me, there was things that were important to happen back then, which is first and foremost stopping the war, and then we can do the moral posturing or calling about some symbols. And the second is also the kind of a societal pressure that I felt, because I was someone who did not grow up outside of Palestine. I spent all my time there, and then suddenly moved to Europe. All these crazy things happened in just 2 years. October the 7th, the war in Gaza, and something no one in the world could have avoided. And then I had also to deal with the societal pressure that the movement itself was in a way or another pushing me to. You have to, for example, protest in the street. If you did not protest in the street, you are bad Palestinian. You have to use this specific term to describe what is happening. If you did not describe it, you are a bad Palestinian, you are a Zionist, or whatever. You have, for example, to call for this strategy for a free Palestine, because I also want a free democratic Palestinian state under the two states framework. But they, for example, want me to push into the strategy of the so-called armed resistance, while I still did not forget what happened because of the armed resistance, or if even one should name it like this. So in a way or another, I was someone who loved his land, who wanted to advocate for his land, who wanted to be free from authoritarian rule, from occupation. But I couldn't see that from the movement itself, and that was one of the reasons that I decided to write the book. Because yes, there is many books written about Palestine and Israel, but especially in the German literature, I couldn't, or I am not aware, at the very least, I'm not aware of a book that gives such level of details of how a normal human being is just born there before he gets fueled about which side to follow or which side to push for. And I tried to give the reader the option not to push him in my direction. I tried to give him the details, what happened with me, what happened with other people, and probably for the reader to decide what is the right thing to do, and what is the right direction to push for. And that was also the reason why we created and then started asking people to join the Realign for Palestine, because you probably would have two narratives about the Palestinians, one in the diaspora and one that is happening in the land. One in the diaspora, and the two are important. I'm not trying to demonize or make one of them bad, but the problem with the diaspora that I felt is that, okay, it's nice and what you call for is important and what we need also, but the priority matters and we should think of what's necessary to be achieved right now. And I saw this problem for them and I excuse them or I understand them, because at the end of the day, it's not easy to understand your country when you leave it for a long time, or probably you were born outside of it and you heard about it, you read about it, but still you cannot get deep down to the level of details that someone lived there once. The other thing is the people who are inside the country, and I was one of them, and I do understand what is the barrier between them and especially the Western world. Yes, they can speak to the Arab world and we try to do as much as we can, but the problem with the Western world is that they have the language barrier, which I was lucky to grow up with a family that spent some time in Europe. Okay, I learned English and I made my way with it. So I said, okay, maybe I can be the channel between those people in the diaspora and those people who are living in the land. And I can use the benefit of speaking in English, learning German, and having this opportunity to write the book. And this is precisely why I felt lonely, because unfortunately with this conflict, and this is not limited to the pro-Palestinians, it's also existing with the pro-Israelis, that everyone wants you to be more to his direction, want you to be more with this group, which is nice, but at the end of the day, I'm someone who wants to make his opinions independently and try to see what everyone has to say. I just don't love to follow the opinions of the majority or what people expect me to say, because I lived under the two. I lived under the occupation and I lived under an authoritarian Islamist rule in Gaza.
You wrote in Twitter once, there is a way of genuine advocacy with Palestinians, and then there is an obsession with Jewish people dressed up as solidarity. What does genuine advocacy look like to you? I
mean, first I will give the audience the context of why and when I say that. I said it when I saw a protest or a planned protest in the memory of freeing the Buchenwald concentration camp. And as I said, I'm someone who personally participated in the pro-Palestinian protest. I was in the biggest one in Berlin. But on the other hand, it wasn't reasonable, or I couldn't understand what is the reason of protesting in the memory of freeing the Buchenwald concentration camp. And we are not even talking about the context of the war itself. When there was a war, we are talking about the context of when the war stopped. So I couldn't make much sense. So the reason why I said it is that, unfortunately, in a way or another, there is some obsession that, okay, we have to protest in front of a synagogue, we have to protest in front of a memorial for a concentration camp or an extermination camp. And I also had the experience of learning about these things when I made my way out of Gaza, and I thought we can make better solidarity actually with the Jewish community and the Israeli community by also prioritizing where we protest. Because yes, you are angry, you might be angry at the government, you might be angry at the Israeli army, you might be angry at the German government, which you should protest and call for, and you have a place to do that. You can protest in front of the parliament, or a reasonable thing. But unfortunately, it's happening right now in some places, at the very least, in front of a concentration camp, in front of a synagogue, and sometimes it does not end well. I'm talking, okay, yes, that was in Germany. Yesterday or 2 days before, there was some kind of a protest in London around the synagogue, and unfortunately, I'm afraid of the point that we take this conflict from a national one to a religious one. This point really scares me, to take it from a national conflict on the land between Palestinians and Israelis, to take it to a national or a religious conflict between the Muslim and the Jewish community, for two things. Because I'm coming from a Muslim background, because a religious conflict is the last thing we need right now, and because of my understanding also of the Jewish history and the Jewish suffering that I had the opportunity to achieve and learn about in Europe.
I just wanted to ask Shay something that just came into my mind, because I think you already think about it in Berlin as some kind of religious conflict, right? That is kind of nourished between of different levels of issues within Germany, because or especially in Berlin, it's being discussed on different levels. It's been discussed as a matter of education, security, Jewish protection for Jewish community, racism, extremism, and I hear you talk a lot about these kind of issues. So maybe I would ask you for your stance on what Hamza just said there.
I can talk generally about just anti-Semitism because we have now more statistics since 7 of October. And I think, first of all, of course, I'm appalled about demonstrating in front of synagogues. I think it's even, I don't understand how it's even okay when it's obviously not okay for other groups. And after 2 years, maybe go back to statistic. Yeah, Jews are only 0.2% of the German population, yet 20%, and that's from the police statistic, yeah, the BKA. 20% of hate crime is anti-Semitism, yeah, anti-Semitic crime, hate crimes. That is astonishing. That is very, very high. I mean, it's uncomparable to any other minority. And that is after the most Jewish people that at least I know, but I think most Jewish people will hide their Jewishness. I mean, if it's Magen David or Kippah, it will be insane to do that. And that is after that. Yeah, that is after we hide our identity in Germany, where it's relatively safe. And that's low numbers, because if you go to Rias, you have many, many more reports that are don't go to the police. And I know for sure by now that's something I feel that is very problematic. It's kind of like this double standard when it comes to Jews, that it's kind of okay. Like, yeah, they have just put more security, but the fact that this is the statistic, nobody really cares. Sorry, I don't see any demonstration against it. If it was against any other minority, I have no doubt there will be an insane, great outrage. And yes, we got to a point where if I criticize something, something that Palestinians do, many people will call me Islamophobe, racist, whatever. But if you stand in front of a synagogue and you call Jews baby killers, it's Israel critique. It's okay. And this is very scary. I start to say Jews, if they can, they should leave. They should leave Germany. That's my advice. Because if you can stand in front of a synagogue and scream the same anti-Semitic things that we heard 100 years ago, it doesn't matter the conflict. I mean, it doesn't matter if there's a ceasefire. It doesn't matter if there's whatever peace. This is not something we can sustain and continue living safely. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but I think we have to push back much more. And again, I'm not against saying your opinion, but I am against, or I am very, very fearful because of this double standard that seems to be go without any borders. They always push the borders, going to concentration camps, synagogues, and it's never enough. Like, what is the next step? Yeah, we always sit and wonder what will happen next.
Because we are in a cultural institution today, a theater, and I think a lot of cultural institutions struggled in the past 2 years to properly house voices and to properly house the ability to hold voices together without instrumentalizing them, or without only pursuing one idea or pursuing self-confirmation or creating echo chambers where the differences are being seen on stage. I wanted to ask you both what maybe or how maybe a cultural project could look like for you both, and which of your core goals that you brought into your project Voices from Israel and Gaza with you are maybe missing from the projects that we see today in the cultural scene.
I mean, one thing I try to do in each one of these sessions is, as I said, is always to give the audience as much details as I can about the conflict or about the life there, because at the end of the day, it's not my responsibility to direct anyone into which group to support or how to advocate. It's at the end of the day their decision to do. But as I said, it's a responsibility on us to give the details that they cannot find in the media platforms. And I do have much to say about the German media and how they reported about the war, and also from the social media platforms, which gives you 1 to 2 minutes about how the situation is there, which is it does not capture the full reality of it. Yes, 2 minutes might be nice to spend your free time on it, but at the end of the day, you wouldn't be able to make a proper opinion on these things that happen there. So this is one thing. The second thing is for a cultural scene, and this is I'm very grateful for the Tag Theater and for the Stiftung Kommunikationsaufbau, is in a way or another not to make the cultural scene be seen as a pro-Palestinian cultural place or a pro-Israeli cultural place, and that's it, because the normal people, the same people will come again and again and again, and you would lose your ability to make such a change. So I would always like the idea, yes, maybe today we are here, a Palestinian and an Israeli, sitting together, with you of course, but what I'm trying to say is that yes, you have to bring all those different perspectives, but it's not just to bring those different perspectives that you sometimes disagree with and just make it an easy session for them. I think there is a responsibility for the cultural places to invite the people, even if you don't agree with them, but to ask them the hard questions, to bring the points why you don't agree with them, and then it can be a conversation, I believe. But to make it extremely pro-Palestinian or extremely pro-Israeli without listening to what the other side has to say, or to make it even easier for us, and this I'm saying this because I also urge the audience not to ask us easy questions, because it's not what we are doing here. We want to get to the critical points or the hard points that the audience are thinking of or cannot answer, and maybe together we can give them the details or the examples that we know from our experience living there, and they can make their own opinions. That you don't have any other way other than visiting the land, of course, which I think is also a good idea. But yes, this is what I think is a responsibility for a cultural scene to do.
Shay, what do you think? I have another question that just came up. Why do you think that especially the artistic or cultural scene has so much to say towards these topics, or so much to add, maybe also from a perspective that sometimes either doesn't have to do, like they maybe don't bring any personal experience with the thing, or they support one-sided ideas of this?
I mean, with it, there is many factors to that, and yeah, I think there is also a pressure and a responsibility on the actor at the end of the day. A responsibility because we are talking about someone who probably hundreds of thousands listen to, if not millions. And there is a real responsibility here. You can use this audience in a very good way and try to make a change, something to make the lives better for the people who are living inside. Or you can take it to the polarized view and, for example, be an actor who chants killing for the people of Israel, or an actor chanting for describing the 2 million people living in Gaza as Hamas people, and you will make it worse for the 2 people living there. So this is how you ruin the responsibility that you are having, or you can use it in a better way. The second thing is, we go again to the societal pressure, because at the end of the day, this actor has an audience, and those audience want something to hear. And it really saddens me to see some actors change their opinions, or in a fast and not understandable way, change their opinions quickly just to match what their audience want to hear. And it's very risky. Yes, having an audience is nice. You can make a good community. You can make good money out of it. But it's like the responsibility between the father and the son, that, okay, if you're gonna say everything about, if you're gonna say yes about everything to your son, you will ruin him at the end of the day, and you will really make his life terrible. And this is what you do with your audience. So sometimes, even if they don't like to hear it, there is, as I say, it's a real responsibility on the actor to say it, and not to be intimidated by how his audience would think about.
Yeah, I would also add that there's a lot of pressure. We talked about it before, that if you don't say the correct thing, there's a whole movement that will come and call you Zionist, boycott, and just cut the debate. And I think, sorry to say that, but I think for many people it's a trend, it's a way to look moral. And sadly it caught up, and it's all over TikTok and social media, and it's very predominant. I think there's something like 50 pro-Israel video, pro-Palestine videos for every pro-Israel account online, and it seems like it's the cool thing to do. And at the same time, that's one thing. And at the same time, there's really, like, I see hate, even people who are like from the left, if they don't say the correct thing, they get to, they're afraid, I think, because that's what I heard. They get their places so-called canceled or boycotted, sometimes attacked, physical attacks. And I guess it's just, I mean, we feel it all the time, but I'm afraid that it's going to spread. It's like a monster that feeds itself, and it's going to continue. It's going to get approval, and it's already got approval. And the more people would be afraid, the less events like this will happen, or whatever events. Like, we see less and less talk and just more echo chambers. And yeah, it seems like this is it's so much emotional. Like, people react immediately emotional if it's not 100% of what they want, what they get used to, or what they hear from the echo chamber, they're immediately against. It's very easy to mobilize so many people today through social media. That is, I feel it hurts not just culture, like also, restaurants. I work in restaurants. Like, they have to be careful what they do, or other events, other like theaters, everything. Like, if you don't say the right thing, you might get we might get some kind of a pushback. And I think a lot of people are afraid of this.
Yeah, I just wanted to, maybe it's two unrelated points, but it all has to do with the cultural and with such a societal pressure on the people, and also beyond the actor, it's also it's a kind of cancel culture that is happening not only on the society level, but also on the state level, unfortunately. Because yes, I brought some of these scenes. There are also people who are being boycotted, in my opinion, for an unrealistic thing or nothing, to be honest. Like, for example, someone chanting Free Palestine or whatever, and then the film becomes boycotted or becomes not acceptable to be presented here and there. And I would love to see the diverse Berlin that I was dreaming of when I was in Gaza, because it's really sad to come to Berlin and see, no, it's changing in such a way. You don't have to agree with it, but this is the Berlin that we know, the diversity, and that you will have all these scenes together, and you can see them all together and make your own opinion. Because another example of that, and maybe it will actually draw me much criticism, but it's also for me another example that one of my favorite authors, also who I wrote about in the book, who shaped the way how I am today, brought like a controversial statement, something I personally don't agree with. I'm talking about the German Egyptian author Hamid Abdel Samad, and yeah, many don't agree with his opinions, but my point is how he got cancelled after, and this is something that I didn't like to see. If you don't agree with him, you should respond or make a debate or make a stage with him, and then respond with such a proper points. But to cancel those people, I think is a much loss to Berlin, and I didn't like to see it. And that will actually take me to the second point, something that affects us also, Palestinians. Well, I'm talking about the idea or the culture of the BDS, the boycott, divestment, and sanction idea. And I wrote about that very recently, actually, because on the one hand, yes, it's good for me to, for example, if you talk to me about boycotting products coming from the illegal settlements in the West Bank, something I would stand for at the very beginning. But I also argued in the same article that the cultural and the academic boycotts are to a large extent doing more harm than useful for the Palestinians. And I brought so many examples of about that. I brought the example of boycotting, for example, the orchestra that was co-authored by the Palestinian author Edward Said, the Jewish Arab orchestra, which is continuing until now. I brought another example about, for example, the film No Other Land, which was literally talking about the reality of the occupation and was boycotted by the Palestinian BDS movement. It was not reasonable for me, because those are the kind of partnerships that I would love to see. Someone advocating for his land, someone advocating for his land, and are asking the hard questions. It happened even to the Standing Together movement, and they were boycotted by the same group. It happened also about the film The Sea, which was an Israeli film describing the realities of a Palestinian child who was thinking or dreaming of reaching the Tel Aviv beach. On the one hand, yes, it describes the country of Israel. On the other hand, it also describes how are the realities of a Palestinian child growing under the occupation. So I think at the end of the day, we ended up boycotting the wrong people, and the people who are in the government or in the coalition or in the settlements are just are just looking at this, and they are not affected by it. So I wouldn't mind. I would support, as I said, boycotting something from illegal settlements from the West Bank, or boycotting the government, some people in the government in Israel.
Oh,
But
who's boycotting Hamas? Tell me.
yes,
Give me
yes.
one German pro-Palestinian leftist who knows about the structural function of Hamas as a system, which is extremely frustrating, I think, for
Say that again. I didn't
like,
get it.
give me an example of a German leftist organization that knows about, and I'm not criticizing the left in its whole, because I think we need left voices in these times of, in these hard times in Germany, but I'm criticizing where it's needed, and it's needed where people don't know something about a system that keeps its own people under a very dark age, basically. And just like, who's boycotting them, you know, like since 2023 or before that, even 2019, there haven't been big movements supporting We Want to Live movement, or just 5 names of people who have been murdered in these protests, which is for me a very frustrating experience.
I would say it's a valid critique to the left that they were not aware, or they did not put much effort or the necessary effort to reach out and to hear about such a movement, because it's a Palestinian movement that was born inside Gaza, not politically affiliated with any political party. It's just the society saying we want an alternative. And then for the first time, because it happened twice, 3 times actually. I missed the one that happened during the war, but it happened twice before that. The last of them was a few months before the war, and this is very thing to reflect on and to think of, that maybe if someone listened to those people a few months before the war, we may not be here today. Maybe we would be in a very different situation. But it's sad, and it's really hard, especially for someone like me, that they did not put the necessary pressure or effort to know about us, about more than 1,000 people arrested at the first protest. Tens were actually died under tortures. And it happened again in 2023, and it's really sad that even during the war itself it happened. Then they protested during the war. Yes, maybe the scale was different, but for me it's something that should be respected by everyone, that you have a group of people who are being bombed and do not have houses and trying to protest and tell you, just listen to us, we are trying to tell you a message right here. And you claim to love them, you claim to support them, which I think is true, but you fail to understand them, you fail to deliver their message. And this is, as I said, a valid critique to the left.
I want to open the round for questions because I think there will be some, or I hope so at least. I wanted to just have one question for you too. I mean, we shared probably a lot of uncomfortable truth, but what is an uncomfortable truth that this audience here tonight probably doesn't want to hear from both of you? Probably doesn't want to hear from you.
Uncomfortable truth?
I know it's big words, but I just wanted to spark a bit of tension.
It's a hard question. There's also a long list. Probably just the fact that we before that there was this comparison to parents and kids, and I feel like we lost the ability to to say to the kids, or like to the young people, or just like be in a place where we said, no, that's enough, that is too much. We just let everything go by. We just think it's gonna pass, and we're gonna pay the price for it. I have no doubt. For example, I give you an example. Yeah, there was a demonstration, I think 2-3 weeks ago in Frankfurt, where thousands of people, I think 2,000 or 3,000 people shouted in Arabic. So it's also a thing, maybe you should learn Arab a little bit, but they shouted, Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yehud, Khaybar, Khaybar, Zionist, which basically means slaughter the Jews, slaughter the Zionists. And I sent this video to a friend that also, I would say, knows enough about anti-Semitism. And he said, well, it's just 300-400 people. It's not all of them. It's 300-400 people. And I thought, okay, but should we wait until it's 5,000, 10,000? When it's enough? When we say this is too much, we just let it go. And I after so much time, after 7th of October, I know it's not going to get better. So it's only going to get worse. So for me, the uncomfortable truth is that I feel we all know that the things are getting worse, and we're not stopping it.
You think you told enough uncomfortable truth for tonight? Okay. All right. Then we're open for your questions. Thank you. And maybe we can also bring some light to the audience so we can actually see you.
Hi. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Hi. Thank you both, and thank you also, Hanan. My question is, it goes back to what you said, Shay, about you would tell Jewish people to leave. And my question is, why is the onus always on minorities to go away and not for German society to change?
I mean, you should ask the majority. Yeah, I don't know, but I think it's very true that it's never ending in a minority. Once you completely let a minority to be hunted, it's not just BDS and all this stuff. You know, restaurants are being bombed, like pretty much like every restaurant got something, some kind of attack, but literally a restaurant in Munich, I think, was they threw some kind of explosive inside. You know, we have synagogues who needs to have 24-hour security. I mean, yeah, so I mean, what will happen to all this hate when there will not be Jews anymore here, or most of them will leave? It's not gonna just disappear. And then I think it's gonna be too late. I don't wanna see the German society have to handle even more hate. Like, so I'm also asking myself a question, why not do something until now? We tried our best and we got zero help. We did all the Anzeige we could, we sent all the information we could, and it seems like it's not understandable, and it's so weird because even Muslim countries do more. Like the Gulf countries already outlawed, most of them, the Muslim Brotherhoods, of course Hamas, because it comes from the Muslim Brotherhood, IRGC, but here they work freely. Now, right now they're focused on Jews, but they have a list and they're gonna continue. They have a goal. The Muslim Brotherhood you can read it online. They have a 100-year goal, and they're quite okay with this. They're like 25 years into that, and they're very successful. And yeah, so that's something you should ask the majority, the German society, a lot of European countries.
But I really like the question because it focused way more on the active part, which is also something I think you both totally approached in the last 2 years. But maybe behind that question also hides the question of why don't you trust, or what does it need from the majority to support your cause more? Maybe that's also something that kind of hid in that question.
Maybe it's not hidden, but I just think also, as I'm also part of a minority myself, and we always are doing the work, we say for decades what needs doing, then we get huge movements behind a cause, and then everybody is kind of like, they get over it and they move on to the next cause. So my question really is, if you really are about something, why are you not changing? Why are you not changing the people around you, the institutions that you work for? Why aren't you actually helping us? What it's getting to is that we actively have to think about going further away and to safer places, possibly in lands that we have no idea how to live in and how to make a life in. And this cycle just continues and continues. So I would like to open that discussion about how are we making any kind of active change, because we can't keep telling you what's wrong and what to do. It needs to be enacted.
Yeah, I also think that through our work, I mean, we try to do much, and I think we achieved much with the sessions that we did, and not only talking in such cultural places, because this is of course important, but it was also important for us to talk to the younger generation, to talk in the schools, and especially the elementary schools. And we had the very good feedback from the schools, we had the very good feedback from the universities, but at the end of the day, we are 2, 3 people, 4 people trying to do such a change. So yes, we can do, but I think there should be more support for other initiatives or other similar initiatives who are trying to do such a similar work to make the effect in a bigger way, or to affect more people. Because I can think of 3 or 4 other examples, but I can think of 100 bad examples that I see in the same country. So I wouldn't say it's fair to put all the responsibility on one project to achieve. So this is one thing, and the other thing is also something I want to talk about, because it's good to have such a conversations, and I saw that we all agree before, and not many people wanted to ask questions. So I also one of the hard truths that I think we should have more conversation about is some things that I see happening in the land and are being talked about much in the outside, but unfortunately when I go to the at the very least, to the German media or to the German government, I cannot see it being discussed in a proper way. And by that, for example, I'm talking about the words like war crimes or crimes against the humanity, which I think both happened during the war. It happened on October the 7th against the Israelis, and much more happened inside Gaza. And another thing, because I brought that because I was reading, for example, about the term ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in the context of Gaza by some settler movements. I'm talking about the Nakhala movement, which is a very radical, small settler movement. And I was reading that in a centrist Israeli media outlet. I was not even reading Haaretz, I was reading Times of Israel. So it's not that lefty media outlet. And I can see the reason why it brought up. You have this Nakhala crazy movement to talk about such stuff. You have some ministers within the cabinet in Israel talk about it. The idea of just let's get rid of the Palestinians, not kill them, but like get them to Egypt or whatever, and that's it. But when I went and I looked in the German media, I couldn't find a single one of them. I'm talking about the mainstream media. I couldn't find a single one of them talking about such a term. I'm not saying take it, agree with everything they say, but even if you don't, just bring it and discuss it and talk about it. If you don't agree with such a description of the situation, you have to come with a better one or something more convincing to the people, because you cannot be passive and just ignore everything or all the discussions that's happening around the world and inside the land itself, and then be surprised of the outcomes that is happening inside the country. You have to make these conversations so you can, in a way or another, talk to the society in a better way.
I find it interesting that you're still surprised by German media coverage of the Middle East, because if I think also about German media coverage of the Iran war or the protests in Iran, it's very sad what is being talked about and what not, and which perspectives are being looked at and which not. But I would like to say it's all about collaborations between minorities. That would be my approach, at least, or that's also what I try to kind of pursue in my political work. Normal-wise, I come from the work of disability studies and disability history, and something that you learn from this history is that you always need vital collaborations to engage or to kind of pursue a goal and to engage or to reach laws that change your life for a better way. And yeah, so my answer to this question would definitely be collaborations between minorities. Anyone else? Yeah.
Thank you. Hamza, you were starting actually to answer the question I have. So maybe you can go a little bit more in that direction, and also Shay. I was wondering how you rate, how you see the German government, the position and the way it's acting in these times with the relation to the war, but also before and future visions.
I don't know. I try not to think too much about what the German government say, I must say, because I see what people say on the street. I work in universities and community centers. I think it's much more important than what politicians say, and they always they actually never listen to any minority. Because they think about votes, and I think that's this maybe connect to the last a question about why they don't do anything. Why should they? As I said, we are 0.2%. We are nothing about. We cannot bring a party up or bring a party down. Obviously there's a lot of people in the current government who are very pro-Israel, but I also hear a lot of politicians that pander to Islamists, pure Islamists. You have infiltration of Islamists in left-wing parties, and that is maybe not now the government, but that's quite scaring me. The rhetoric that I hear about about this conflict from politicians that try to mobilize all this hate and get more votes, and then also radicalize more people and be more radical, so they get votes. And I actually think also the government sometimes are pro-Israel, sometimes try to be. They have no stand. I don't understand their stand. Also in Iran, one day they're like they should go to Iran. One day he doesn't understand why there's a war in Iran. There's no like clear moral backbone, as I see it, to any government that I saw in the last 20 years here. Sorry. Yeah, they're almost irrelevant. They're like go back and forward. Yeah, did I answer that?
I would say that as someone from Palestine, I expected much more, to be honest, from the German government, but I was failed on multiple levels. I was failed when I saw that, for example, the polls in that was presented on the Deutsche Welle website, showing that yes, the more than 50% of the German society advocated for or for recognizing Palestine under the two-state solution framework. And here we see not only the minorities, they did not even listen to the more than 50% of the society who responded to these polls. The same even happened when there was calls for, I think, arms embargo or trade embargo during the war, and also more than 50% voted for, but the government failed them. So I expected the government to listen to its own people. This is at the very least one of the major reasons why should we have a government, to listen to its own people and do what they do what they ask for. Unfortunately, I couldn't see that, and it wasn't just a moment in vacuum. There was many countries who are doing and recognizing the state, but it was not nice for me to see the German government stepping out from that. Right now, it's one of the very few countries who do not accept it, though they say that they advocate for a two-state solution. So it's not clear under which utopian world they want to see the two-state solution if they don't recognize the two states who are supposed to live together. It's really unrealistic. And the second thing is also happening until now, actually, because when I was coming in the train today, I was reading the news and I found, for example, two Palestinians. One is a child, 13-year-old, and the other was a man, 32 years old. They were killed by an attack by a group of settlers on the Al Mughayr village in the West Bank. And I'm not talking about Gaza or Hamas or a war. I'm talking about some very bad or horrific attacks that happened by the settlers. The last month in March, for example, they killed 8 civilians. And now it's happening again in April. And yes, sometimes the government takes positions and says, yeah, this is bad, the violence should stop, but it doesn't work like this. Unfortunately, you have to take more harsh measures and start maybe thinking of sanctioning these settlement groups or these radical groups of the settlers who are committing these attacks. And I'm talking about more than 400 attacks according to the UN own data. I'm talking about just 2026. We are in April right now. According to the Israeli own numbers, I think it was published by the IDF, they recorded at the very least more than 250 attacks. And many of them we are talking about burning homes, shooting at people, throwing stones, vandalizing property. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not expecting anything from the current coalition in Israel. So this is why I'm calling on this government to maybe use the leverage and the pressure that they have on the government and to try to stop this. If you want to see a two-state solution being applied, you have to do some measures. I'm talking, for example, about just since the current coalition took office from 2022, more than 100 settlements were approved in the West Bank. I'm talking about more than 90,000 house units just since 2022. And what did the government do? Nothing. So how do you think the two-state solution will be applied once we have those house units? Because people will come and live in these units, and when you want to apply the two-state solution, how would you say to the people who are living in these houses, yes, you have now to pack and leave and maybe go resettle in Tel Aviv or in Haifa? I'm a realistic guy, and I'm telling you, it wouldn't be easy, and I'm not sure if it's going to be possible even.
And at the same time, you have projects that try to work through this within both sides of the green line, which you don't hear in media about at all. So I'm also wondering, why aren't these projects that push forwards to progressive change, that push forward, that also under very hard attack from either extremist Israeli groups like the one you mentioned, or the PA, Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, are threatened by? Why don't we hear about this in the media? That could also be a question that I always like to raise, because they exist, but they are not attractive enough to be pushed. And another thing I wanted to add to the government: how to trust a government with such a delicate, or the German government with such a delicate geopolitical area as Israel and Palestine, when they go and make deals with al-Yulani while Kurdish and Druze people are being slaughtered by his armies. You know, like, what do you expect from a government like that? So I don't know if we should address the government and in its reigning bodies as our pure fighting goal. I think what we do here makes a lot of sense. And yeah. Another question from you? Da gibt's eine Frage. Frau Dir.
Hello. Thank you very much for this great discussion. I have a question to Shay, because I don't get much insight into. I wanted to ask, like, when you were part of the leftist group back in Israel, how were the conversations there also regarding, like, the creation of Israel and like also the Nakba that happened in terms of the creation of it, and if it was also like a topic that was discussed, and also maybe who was part of the leftist groups, and if you also tried to work together already there with Palestinians, and thank you.
Who are the leftist groups, you ask also? No, or? Well, there were a lot. I was a part of a very niche Trotsky group, but I'm very happy that I was, because we were so left that we criticize the left, and we never forgot what the communists did, and we always said that democracy is needed even in socialism. So anyway, I would say, first of all, about the Nakba. I mean, I grew up in the center, and I went to a school that was very open about it. I think Tel Aviv University is also very open about it. If you want to hear about it, you will hear about the Nakba in 48, and I mean, everyone talks about it, and everyone can say what they want. It's really, I don't remember it as an issue back then. Maybe now it's a bit more gentle issue, but yeah, obviously from the left perspective, it was the same what we hear now, oppressor narrative. But at the same time, you know, like I heard everything that I hear now, yes, but at the same time, I never heard people call for intifada because we grew up in the intifada. We saw buses exploded. We know what it means. People stabbing each other on the street. So, like, the left in Israel is very different, yeah? Like, we have already this experience, and it's not a game for us. So, yeah, you can have a debate about it. I don't remember all the specific about this topic, but I remember people talk about it all the time. And I did a lot of project with Palestinians. I also studied in Sderot for 4 years. I don't know if you know it. It's a college close to the Gaza border and very left-wing. We had a lot of professors who were kind of boycotted from other universities, like Eyal Sivan, maybe you know, a lot of activists, and a lot of Palestinians. Also, I had a lot of good friends that we worked together. I mean, making movies, but also events. And yeah, I was in the West Bank on Fridays in a demonstration against the wall in a village called Be'in. I don't know if you know. It was quite famous back then, long time ago, because they decided to have peaceful demonstration, and because of that, the army decided not to shoot like live ammunition, because there was they stopped people through stones or other kind of stuff they used to throw. Yeah, that was my experience. But I think I also myself did not know everything about the Nakba, and I would say that it's very important to talk about it, but I feel like it's very much weaponized these days, and it's it's this victimhood mentality that I think it's very dangerous for every society. And I say it also from a Jewish perspective, like we also were victims, but I don't want to sit in Germany and spend all my time just talking about the Holocaust. I think we need to find solution. And I think many times when people talk about the Nakba, they don't want to find a solution. They just use it to show that, yes, Israel should not exist and all the Zionists should leave, go away, and we don't care if it's millions of people. Bye, you're done. Like that is what I hear on the street. It's never used in a way that, yes, every side had its own mistakes, but we need to overcome it and live together. It sadly goes like the conversation that sounds like this is less and less and less, and the conversation that uses this event to just bash Israel and demonize and basically say it should not exist. This is more popular right now, and I think it's very dangerous for both Israelis and Palestinians.
I actually want to say something about the Nakba, because yeah, I agree with some of what Shay said, but it's also one of the hard truths that I also want the audience to understand, because I think there is somehow misunderstanding of what was the Nakba meant to be and how the people see it today, because I'm pretty sure that to a large extent many people think of the Nakba rightfully, and as Shay said, many Israelis recognize it, including historians or modern historians like Benny Morris, who said, yes, there was 700,000 people, Palestinians, who were displaced. So Benny Morris finds it necessary. I find it horrible. But at the end of the day, he acknowledged it. But my point is how the people look at it right now is that you have to take those 700,000 or right now the 7 million people and send them back to what is now the state of Israel. Now, if you went back to how this word came actually to the people, the word Nakba, it was by a book by the Syrian historian Constantine Zurek, and when he wrote the meaning of the Nakba, that was the first time such a word being used to describe the events of 1948. And even in his book, like, you wouldn't find much reference to the refugee word. Like, there was no refugee word back then because he wrote it before the establishment of the UNRWA organization. They used to refer to it with the Arabic word the musharradin, which have some similar meaning, but it was used once or twice inside the book. I think in the first edition it was used once. The Nakba for Constantine Zurek, the Nakba means the catastrophe. The Nakba for him was that how 5 armies or 6 Arab armies were defeated at the hands of a newly established Israeli army, or even it was Zionist militias. It wasn't a serious army in the current meaning of the word. And for him to overcome that, he urged on the Palestinians and the Arab world to dance. I'm not trying to take the Zionist movement and make it the paradise and the nice movement that did not make crimes. As I said at the beginning, they did, and they find it horrible. But for him, it was, look at them, how in a way or another they united for the political goal that they did. And if a responsibility should be on the Palestinians, is not to look for the emotional support or to the push that at some day you will go back, which is nice to think about, but unrealistic, unfortunately, in my opinion, and to move on and make a country the same way Israel also built a country. Because, as I said, acknowledging the crime is one thing, but living with it is a totally different thing. So I think it's worth referencing to the book and what the Nakba meant for Constantine Zurek, because I think it's important to see what the people back then were thinking of when they wrote such a books, not what the people understood or what they think of such an event.
Okay. I think there are no more. Doch, that's too shy. Too shy. Okay, 1 second.
So I'm still thinking about the question you asked, because I'm part of the majority who lives in Germany, and I find it really hard to know what to do. And it's a privilege. I speak from a very privileged position, but so when it comes to the Middle East conflict, I try to maybe facilitate dialogue or see all sides or educate myself. But especially when it comes to anti-Semitism right now, I really struggle, because I'm in a lot of leftist contexts, and I feel sometimes when I speak up, then people assume, oh, you're anti-Muslim or you're racist. And I think it's become very hard to talk about this, and it's a problem. And honestly, I don't know if anybody has a good idea what to do, because I want to do something, and it makes me very emotional. I'm sorry, but I don't know. Sometimes I go to demonstrations, or I take Hamas stickers off, or I try to do, but it all feels really hopeless. And yeah, maybe somebody has a good idea. Sorry, this is not a...
Don't be sorry for that. I think the emotional impact of our lives, but maybe also the lives of some people for the last 2 years, can be pretty scary. And it's also sometimes it seems very hopeless. I can understand that a lot.
I just don't want to cry because I'm not the victim here. I just really struggle to be a good ally. I think this is...
People don't cry just because they're victims. Anyway, I think it's not so hard not to be anti-Muslim. It's really not that hard. If you use words as, for example, I don't know, Islamist, this often is perceived as a fighting or as a word that it seems to be very attacking, or that seems to be Islamophobe or whatever. It is basically a reality for a lot of people living in states as Syria, for example. So this is not bigotry to criticize something. It has nothing to do with racism at all. And not to be racist is sometimes difficult if you grew up in Germany, which is a racist structured country, and it's also a country that is in its administration racist structured and also anti-Semitically structured. So everyone, each of us living in this country somehow like internalizes these kind of ideas, and coming in the room and wanting to talk about anti-Semitism and racism should never be answered with for accusations. Like it should. This isn't a debate about. It's not bringing someone forward if you look at accusations to within these rooms. And I think this is something the dynamic had itself taking, because there's a lot of pressure. I think this is something you both really well already talked about it. There's a lot of pressure from outside about making accusations, and yeah, that's what I wanted to say. You can criticize systems and you can criticize larger structures without showing bigotry. It's possible.
I mean, I cannot help the feeling. It's a hard feeling, but you said that it mainly comes from the left-wing circle. I hear it a lot, like in the left, when they say I'm not anti-Semite, I'm just anti-Zionist, I'm not this, and they think, I mean, and they always go back to this: I am not left, I cannot be wrong. I'm left, I cannot be wrong. I'm against the bad things, and it got to a point where, yeah, a lot of them support or I would say at least give excuses for Islamists, a lot of, not just Hamas. And I would say, remember that they're not the minority in the Middle East. Like, the Druze are the minorities getting slaughtered in Syria by thousands by Islamists, Kurds, Yazidim, they protect fascists. I'm sorry, they're not left. When I hear this and they are supporting Hamas and they say they're left, I mean, as a left wing, maybe I'm old school, they're not left. They went too far. Sorry, you're not left anymore. Yeah? So, I mean, you can ignore him or say that to them, but for me it helps to think, yeah, those are just another kind of fascists. Yeah, another kind of fascists who protect Islamists and are okay with anti-Semitism. They will always have this but the Zionists, but blah, blah, blah. I don't see any difference from any other hate group when I hear this. I don't understand why there's no call for peace and anything like this. So for me, what I notice, and it's sad to say it because I want to be part of the left, but there's so much of the left that is not left anymore, just except for the name.
I don't think I have much to add, but I would say that I don't think you owe anyone to explain what you are doing or what you are advocating for, because no matter which side you are advocating for, you will have this pushback, will have this criticism. Believe me, it doesn't matter even if you started supporting Hamas tomorrow, there will be people who will. So you will always have criticism. And as I said, you don't owe anyone to explain your position, and I don't think it's good for your activism or what you do to get into this defense position that you have to explain why I'm doing that, why I'm taking down a Hamas sticker, why I'm defending anti-Semitism. This is something you should just owe to yourself and to think about and believe in, and that's it.
Da ist noch eine Frage.
Hello. I have a very simple question. I have a half a French background, cultural, and I follow very much the discussion in France. and it's about Hamas. In Germany, it's very simple. Hamas is terrorists. It's like for USA. They are terrorists and you don't have to discuss about anything. In France, it's a little different. They use the word of resistance. La résistance, it has a certain history. And Jacques Beau, which you know maybe, he says Hamas isn't at all one organization from top to the bottom, hierarchically structured. There are hundreds of groups and very different groups, and they are very autonomous. So I would very much like that you, dass Sie mich etwas aufklären, because I'm very confused about this very different discourse about Hamas.
Yeah, I think Hamas is like many other political Islamist groups who unfortunately they do not believe in the idea of a nation or to protect a nation. What they think of is a totally different project, a totally different one Islamic project or a big Islamic state. Something I, as someone, even as a Palestinian, I don't want to be, or I don't want to live under. This is one thing. And to prove my point, for example, if you went back to the words of the Hamas co-author, Mahmoud al-Zahar, and he's one of the co-founders of Hamas, and it's in a recorded interview. And when he gets asked by the interviewer about his projects for Palestine, and he points to the map and he says, our projects are much bigger than this, just a small piece of land on the map. And believe me, he was not talking about Palestine alone or Israel alone, because you can barely see it on the map. So this is just one co-founder of Hamas, and the same goes for others. Yes, for them, they might use the word resistance and they hide behind it, because the word Islamic State doesn't sound very good in Europe, and many people, I hope, will oppose it. But if you go to this language of resistance, especially in a country like, for example, France, when you have the experience of the Algerian and the French issue, so it will sound more. And if there is two groups of Hamas, I don't believe there is more than two groups. It's just one more alienated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and by that I mean the one more alienated with Qatar and Turkey, and the other one which is more alienated with the Islamic Revolution in Iran. I'm talking about the Iranian regime. So you have, in Gaza, we call them the hardcore Hamas people, who are more alienated with the Iranian regime, and people like Sinwar, all the military leadership are more alienated to the Iranian regime, but the political one is more alienated to Qatar. Now, for me, there is no good and bad Hamas. I think both are bad, and I lived 27 years or 26 years there, and I didn't see any good from the two groups. And at the end of the day, they are trying to reach the same goal, as I said, as a big Islamic state, but for them, they are trying to explore different means to do that. One is trying to do it militarily by digging tunnels, making rockets, X and Y and Z, and one is trying to make it with such good, I would say, diplomacy relations. I'm talking about the relations with Qatar, the relations with Turkey, the relations with other countries, other Arab countries, and with their propaganda machine. And they really do have a very good propaganda machine that is affecting people, not only in the Arab world, but even in, as you said, in France, in other countries. And to once again prove the idea that those people do not believe even in the idea of a Palestinian nation, they started their career in Gaza, and this is how they started their career in 2006, by killing 700 or 600 Palestinians. The same atrocities that you saw on October the 7th, we as people in Gaza, yes, we saw something similar. It was, but the difference for us, it was done to the Palestinians. It didn't make much noise in the outside world. But this is what those people believe in, and this is what they tell us in front of our faces. They say it in interviews. It's available on some public or some YouTube channels. But I think there should be more effort to get those ideas and this information to the Western audience so they can have an idea of what they are supporting. Because I don't think there is a proper effort or energy, for example, for the French audience to hear the points that I was talking about. To hear, for example, Mahmoud al-Zahar when he was talking that, no, our project is much bigger than this. Or to see that, for example, no one in Hamas's leadership believes in a two-state solution. So this is why they refused even to join the Palestinian Liberation Organization. They said, because we don't believe in a two-state solution. What we want is just a big Islamic state. So their hostility is not even only for the Jews or for the Israelis, but we saw it happening to the minorities in Palestine, because we are not only Muslims. We also have a Christian minority. We have Armenian minority, but mostly we saw their hatred and their violence against the Christian minority inside the Gaza Strip. For example, since Hamas ruled Gaza since 2007, and the Christianity is an official religion under the Palestinian government or the Palestinian Authority, but Hamas stopped all the celebrations or the I forgot the English word for it, but the annual occasions or holidays for the Christian community, and they stopped it. The Christian community no longer could have celebrated that in Gaza since 2007 until now. Maybe right now they celebrate it a little bit, and even when you look at the numbers for the Christian community, for example, inside Gaza, I think we had 11,000 people in 2007, according to the Palestinian Center for Policy and Research Survey, and until before the war, we had a few hundreds of them. Now, some of them, of course, escaped for economical reasons or because of the siege, but the large majority are a society who could not celebrate publicly inside Gaza and wanted more space to do that. And unfortunately, under Hamas, it's not possible.
Can I add something? Can I add something? Or you want to ask him? Okay.
Can I imagine, you said since 2007, like a party with a military part and with the political, with the diplomatic, etc. Can you tell something about Mitgliedschaft? How many women, how many men, or is there such thing as a membership?
I see what you are talking about now, I understand. And I think this distinction is important and true, because what Hamas was in Gaza is different from the other militias. For example, it wasn't like Hezbollah in Lebanon, who is just a militia there. Hamas was in Gaza a militia and a government at the same time, doing those two things. And I think it's important to differentiate the people who worked in the government. I'm talking about the public sector, people who worked, for example, in the health ministry, for example, in the municipalities. My father, by the way, worked in the municipalities, because we are not a society who lived with this group for 1 or 2 months or 1 or 2 years. We are a society who lived with them for 20 years. So even if you don't agree with them or you don't agree to their ideology, you have to work in your country or your city, and you have to secure your own living at the same time. So if your distinction is about the government and the militia, I think this is a true distinction, and we should separate the government from the militia. Yes, there is people who are there in the government. I cannot describe them as I describe Hamas as a militia. Hamas as a militia, the reason why I say that they are a terrorist one is because of what they vow publicly on what they do on the ground. But if I'm talking about someone working for the health ministry or someone working for the transportation ministry, I think this is someone who is trying to make a living.
Women?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm supportive of women. I will defend them. I don't know, but we don't have this image or the old image that we had, for example, that some Hamas's women would interact. At the very least, I didn't see that, I would say. And if this is your question, if the woman participate in military activities, no, that wasn't the case in Gaza. I didn't see any of it. In the party, yes, they do participate, but in just a symbolic way to show that yes, we have 2 or 3 women, but they cannot make a decision, of course. They had their own police of women, but it's just symbolic measures that they had to do when they participated in the elections in 2006. And something, as I said, to export in their propaganda machine, which makes their own way to Europe and for the people who would love to see such a picture. But on the ground, they cannot make any decision.
And can I just, I want to I
can I
also
add?
want to say something. Okay, you can go first.
One sec,
I will-
or? I mean, I go back to your first question, if it's okay, because first of all, you said in Germany, it's clear that they're not just resistance, they're a terrorist group. It's not so clear. Many people call them resistance here. You have everyday demonstration. Who? Well, just like a lot of people on the street that demonstrate, but I would say some politicians that I hear from the left call them resistance. I even remember, I can, if you want, we can even exchange emails. I can send you even Instagram post of some politician, probably not a big one in one of the left-wing parties, that actually supported when Hamas killed his own citizens because he said they are collaborator with the Zionists, so Hamas did a good job. So there is, maybe not as in France or Ireland, but going back to, but there is people who definitely support it, definitely call them resistance. I go back to anti-Semitism because it seems like this demonizing of Israel makes people grab any political group that wants to fight Israel and whitewash them. And it's not just Hamas. You see it with Hezbollah. When the war started, you had also a lot of support for Hezbollah because Hezbollah joined the army. Hezbollah is also a terrorist organization. They're also in the parliament, but they're a little bit similar. But they're also very brutal towards their own population. It's Islamic terrorist organization. The same thing with Iran, with the IRGC. You see now people going by thousands daily with the IRGC flag who slaughtered 40,000 people in 2 days, at least. Why? Because they fight Israel. So they're supporting them. Even women who support in a regime that, I don't want to say all the rough details, but they don't treat women nicely, to say the least. And that is, for me, the really mind virus of this anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, that they have this image and they're so full of hate that they will take everything and make it resistance. They don't live under those regimes. It's very easy to say they support them. They don't live under them, but they are pinkwash them, they are whitewash them, they are a lot of them support them. And I think I find it very, very sad. I haven't seen any, it's like every country, like the Irish compare it to, you come from France, but other countries do the same. They have this IRA in Ireland, so they immediately have this, finally, another enemy that they can put their past conflicts into outside conflicts that they don't have to feel the consequences. I heard it from Turkish people with what they have with the Kurdish. Everyone just used this conflict to his own political kind of gain. But yeah, I mean, to think that Hamas is just resistance when you can read their charter online. It's not secret. I mean, they want a Sharia law and they want a Caliphate, right? I mean, how can you be progressive and support it? No matter how much you hate Israel, you have to admit this is not something you would want to live yourself. Definitely not as a woman. and also it's pretty clear what they think about Jews. Like it says openly, they don't hide it. So for me, like when I hear this, I'm like, it's for me it's so fake when they just say it's a resistance. They just don't want to see the truth. Like really, this is a terrorist and that's a terrorist organization, and that's maybe the biggest kind of achievement of Hamas, that after 7 of October, I think first time in history we take those Islamist organization and we make them something else. We never said it about Al-Qaeda now people might say, but before, I mean, maybe I'm too old school, but we never said that those organizations are resistance, or what ISIS did in Syria to Yazidin, and suddenly it's okay. I think it's because they just demonize Israel. It's this mind virus.
There's something someone said, I'm just going to do this one quote, and it's from the special rapporteur of Palestinian territories, Madame Albanese, who I quote said, they build schools, they build schools, they build hospitals, they build streets. They are not a terrorist organization. They are the elected government body of the Palestinians in Gaza, and they have the right to resist. And that was after October 7th. And she works for the United Nations. She has a lot of power. Things she says will be quoted. They will be rewritten. They will be part of a collective memory within societies. And so it will be very hard to kind of push against this narrative from a person that with high power position. And I think that also kind of grasps this question of yours maybe a bit together.
I actually have to push back against this because I mean, yeah, I will start from the very beginning, that they build the schools, the streets, and whatever, which is absolutely false. I'm willing to acknowledge that in 20 or more, 18 or 19 years, Hamas did not build a school, did not build a street, did not build a hospital inside Gaza with their own money. Every school, every hospital, every street inside Gaza, when you go and visit these places, the first thing that you see is donated by the European Union, donated by Qatar, donated by Saudi Arabia, Emirates. Literally, not a school that I went in was not donated to us. And this is something we have to admit with. And this, I'm saying that as someone who loves his country, because I would have loved that our money was directed to those things. But unfortunately, for a long time, at least from 2019, what Hamas was directing their own money to is underground. Nothing was above the ground. We didn't see any of that. And I found that astonishing, that someone who should know more about the land, should know more details, doesn't know this. And this is one thing. The other thing is about to see them and the idea of a resistance or whatever. I think at some point we should see this problem or this conflict beyond the lens of the Algerian or the French colony, and getting to the philosophies of resisting by any means necessary. First, because of how the conflict is different from this one, and how at the very least French had France to go back to, and Algeria had Algeria to stay in. And second, because even if all of that is not convincing, at the very least, one should look at the strategies that they tried, if one would say that this idea of resistance was done to free the land. At some point, you should reflect and stop and see, okay, where did I end up with this idea of resistance, or armed resistance, to be specific? Because we had a very small piece of land in Palestine that was not occupied. Yes, there was a siege, but it was not occupied, and I'm talking about the Gaza Strip. If I'm going to apply the terms of the idea of armed resistance, now it actually got me backwards. Now the small territory is fully destroyed. What is more important is tens of thousands lost before the land. And I cannot see a clear window when my land will be rebuilt again, if any. And this is not limited to the current war or the last war. It happened before with this advocacy for this idea. So at some point, we should reflect and realize that some strategies are putting us in the backwards. And even when we have bad actors, to stand and bravely to say that yes, we do have those bad actors who are not any kind of those nonsense resistance, if I'm gonna be polite, and it's just a terrorist group that was terrorizing its own people before terrorizing Israel, and now they are exporting it to the outside. Now, the reason I'm saying this, as I said, is as someone who's tired of this 1 million attempts to do makeup for Hamas and make it look in a very beautiful way, and it's just a group of resistance. They did a bad mistake and that's it. No, they did not. They brought a catastrophe after the other to the Strip, and at some point we should just put them aside. We should stop them, and even, as I said, even if the audience doesn't want to hear it, we have to say it.
Well, thanks for your words, both of you, and thank you for your questions. I would close our part here now.
Yes, we are actually late anyway. I think this signs the sign that we had a really very fruitful conversation. The longer it got, I thought, actually. So thank you for your patience and thank you for your questions. And you can see how important it is to follow this dialogue. So you said you've done now 15, 16 events. I think there are a lot which still have to be done, unfortunately. There's a lot of Kommunikationsaufbau to do ahead of us, so we have a lot to do. I said in the beginning, we are starting our spring season, so this stage is there for such kind of dialogue and such kind of conversations. And I don't want to list now all the things. We not only do talks. Tomorrow we are talking about Lebanon. We are talking with our artist friends from the theater group Sukak from Beirut. It will be partly here and partly online, so you're warmly welcome to this. But also we are having shows here. We have a collaboration with the second Ahmad Theater Festival from Diyarbakir. That's a festival which also deals with the issue of war and theater. What can we do? What can we say? And actually to spread empathy is our most important tool in theater. So we're sharing a show from Diyarbakir, which will be streamed here. And on Friday, Saturday, we have the War Diaries, Berlin and Tel Aviv production about the war in Israel and in Gaza, about the traumatic consequences the war is doing to the society in Tel Aviv. And our friends are showing Mami Wata, which is a Cameroon German theater production about water, so less about war. This is a very elaborate, big production, so there will be something really central also to see here. Please have a look at our program. Thank you for coming, and please stay with us for a while in our foyer at the bar. Thank you very much for your power, braveness, and all this energy. Thank you.